morning and welcome to the Dailies, your morning program where we keep you updated with the happenings from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Sela Elisha Dasham and I'm doing the program with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Morning, Sally.
All right, we have quite a number of stories that are on the front page of the paper. You can do well to join us through Facebook and drop your comment, your views, and your opinions concerning stories of interest to you. We will be starting with the Daily Times newspaper. Federal government assures of proper utilization of 6.2 trillion naira additional budgetary expenditure. Detail found on the front page. You can continue reading more of that in the paper. Address public grievances amid looming national protests. This is NLC telling the President Tinubu. With the writer here saying urges the President to invite protest organizers for dialogue, and Tinubu traditional and religious leaders caution youth against the planned protests. More detail about that can be found on page 2. Reps to sanction agency coils over alleged $60 billion inflated cash calls. Again, court dismisses Abacha family 500 million naira sued against federal government over Abuja property. Low investment major challenge in upstream oil and gas. Komolafa CEO NUPRC saying this. You can find that on page 5. Consumers shun bread, pastries as price continue to soar. With more details about that found on page 11. And I believe we will not be having this if only we are, growing our own weed, growing our own, making sure that all of the local things needed to make bread is available. Rachel, you could actually tell that back then, bread was easily accessible, but right now, bread is a no-go area. So we're seeing, I think there was a time, if not early this year, last year, where we saw bakers going on strike because they could not afford some of the things that are needed for baking and all of that. And I think this is where the government needs to come in. What can we do? And it still takes us back to what we have been saying over and over, the fact that we need to give agriculture priority. I recall clearly when the Russian-Ukraine war started, that has been the concern, that we import some of these things that are needed. Therefore, the government needs to look inwardly. And it's getting over 2 years and we're yet to do anything about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing when we see things like this, might look like, okay, after all, there are others that can afford it. But then how many Nigerians can comfortably afford to buy bread and eat? So I'm hoping that the government, let's not just look at it that it's all about pastries and bread, but then let's also look at it the fact that our agriculture sector is suffering, therefore it needs attention of the federal government. I'm happy seeing state governors in their various levels trying to see what they can do, but we need a collaboration, a collective effort to see what we can do about this thing. Are we trying to say inflation will not come? It will, but then to some extent, if we have all of this thing without really importing it, everything is within us here. We'll be able to see how we can curtail it. So, that is what it is as the prices keep going up and up each day.
Sally, I've seen bread companies that thrived for well over 5 years, doing well, growing, people loving their pastries and all of that closing down. And you know that it's not because this business is not good enough or because they have not done what it takes for them to stay, but then the economic situation makes it totally impossible for them to thrive. And this leads us back to the conversation we had yesterday, that a government that have the people by the policies they create and the atmosphere they create for the people to thrive in every field, in every sector, be it business, be it private, be it work, be it anything. That is how you know a government that truly have the people in mind. Any government policy that takes people 10 years backward, it's not a government that you should want to be your government in any way, because there's a thing about a business. If a business should be able to thrive for 5 years, it means that by virtue of everything, this business should grow. I see businesses that could have had more branches but are where they are, just trying to survive. And it's not because they've not done the needful thing and all of that, but they are doing a lot of things. So for me, when I look at it, that people are shunning it, the people that worries me the most are the bakers, are the business owners here, because they are the ones that have more to lose, because now they have equipments that are not functioning. You have to have value for everything that you have. When you invest in millions of machines, you're supposed to get your investment back. They're supposed to serve you. They're not supposed to sit down there because you cannot function. And it's easy for us, the consumers, to be like, okay, well, we cannot afford it. We find other alternatives and options. But what about the business people? What about the people that jobs have been lost because they cannot run anymore? And then what about the investment that people have lost? It's so much. We're in a time where everybody, consumers and suppliers, are just finding it really, really hard. And I am looking forward to when the story will change in our economy. We're still in the tunnel, Sally. I'm not seeing the light
It
anywhere
seems the light
anytime
is
soon.
very far from
It's very,
reach.
very far. The more we see certain decisions unfolding and taking place, you just can't help but wonder. But I just hope that we will wake up one day to a favorable economic environment, that small, medium businesses can thrive and then eventually grow to like a larger scale.
You know, these are situations that you just can't help but see. The more you see, the less you understand what is
Exactly.
actually
Yes.
happening. Well, the last story on the Daily Times newspaper: troops raid IPOP. ESN calm, neutralize two commanders, recover arms in Imo and Abia. Detail found on page 8. We have a picture story where we can see illegal miners arrested by operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in Obomoso or your state on Monday. We can see them being filed in a line over there. You can do well to get the paper and read more detail of other stories of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, bill to establish LG Electoral Commission. Don't undermine federalism, political parties, others warn. Details can be found on page 15. NPA rakes in 541 billion naira revenue, remits 255 billion naira in first half of 2024. A report from Coco outgoing MD hands over new staff clinic, 5 other completed projects to successor. Tantita Security Chairman congratulates new head of service, says Tinubu has continued to honor South-South. Court dismisses Abacha's family's 500 million naira suit against IG over Abuja property. Enugu security forces issue stern warning to sit-at-home promoters, say we will appear to you like a ghost and deal with you like a ghost. More details can be found on page 27. Obi laments dwindling economy, wants political leaders to take action. Land use charge crisis between Oyo government TCN affecting our members, a statement from MAN. Edo 2024 Court of Appeal upholds Asu Igbodalo's candidacy. You can find details on page 16. Federal government moves to resolve crude supply dispute with Dangote refinery. The writer says Lepobiri meets with Dangote, NNPCL, NMDPRA, NUPRC buses. Reps set for nationwide forensic audit of imported adulterated petroleum products. Flag off probe of non-supply of crude oil to Dangote refinery and others. You can find all the details on page 8. Planned national protest, it is ill-timed, coming from ACF. Address citizens' grievances, coming from NLC. Christian Elders Forum warns Tinubu. Police beg Abuja residents not to join protest. There will be national crisis if APC does not allow free fair poll in Edo, Obaseki threatens. Details can be found on page 16. And we have a picture story where we can see the meeting with Lepobiri, Dangote, NNPCL, and MDPRA and UPRC buses. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
All right, a look at the leadership. We have collapsed another 12 schools at risk in just coming from the governor of Plateau State, Mutfwan. And I'm happy because after the collapse of that other center academy, we're seeing that a number of research is being done, and we're seeing that about 12 schools are actually at risk. So I'm happy that, schools are on vacation right now. So this will be an ample time to be able to sanction those schools, see what can be done about it before September. And then maybe if those schools are part of the schools that will be conducting summer lessons, which we know is part of the things we have here, I hope something will be done about that. But I'm happy this has been realized early before we see another collapse again taking the lives of students. Still on leadership, we have Tombololon Wilson Jack's appointment as head of service that can be found on page 7. Trending, we have Max Air aircraft record tire bus and numbers. Federal government to spend 36 billion naira to convert 30,000 vehicles to CNG, but stories can be found on page 2. Federal government palliative, which is a big story. 1 week after, 21 states are with truckloads of grains, with a rider here saying Anambra, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Kwara, Rivers take delivery. Labour asks Tinubu to dialogue with protest leaders. Yobe won't join the protest, says Governor Buni. You can read that on page 4. Christian elders write Tinubu National Assembly seek new constitution. Lottery not within exclusive legislative list, Supreme Court affirms. That you can read on page 7. And we see here writing for media and monetizing it for reading on Wednesday. You can read that on page 6. Chibok girl with pregnancy, 2 children rescued. That you can find on page 7. We have a picture story here where we can see a migrant rest on the sand after arriving in a fabric boat. On the island there in Spain. You can do well to get and read more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On Blueprint newspaper, Tinubu monarchs other leaders caution on planned protest. Tinubu appoints 8 new FRSC deputy commercials, retires 3. Dangote refinery turns to Libya and Angola for crude supply. On sports, beach soccer AFCON, Victoria's Super Sand Eagles return set for second leg. Details can be found on page 33. The big story on the paper, 50% levy in 2024 amendment bill targets banks only, coming from the federal government and National Assembly. Decision may put future investments at risk, a statement from expert. CBN commercial banks appear before lawmakers today. High sulfur comment, Lopobiri intervenes, meets Dangote, Kiari, and Farouk. You can start with the details on the front page. NPA rakes in 551 billion naira revenue, remitted 255 billion naira in 6 months. A report from Bello Coco hands over new staff clinic, 5 other projects to Dan Soho. Nigeria spent 1.76 trillion naira to service debt in the first quarter of 2024, report from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Africa's food agri market to hit 1 trillion naira in 2030, a report from the African Development Bank. Acting Unizik VC assumes office, former returns to DVC. Details can be found on page 9. Troops rescue another abducted Chibok school girl, Iyi Abdul. Details can be found on page 18, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, over 30,000 jobs lost to closure of manufacturing firms in 4 years. You can read that on page 6. Federal government, Dangote, NNPC meet explore solution to refinery crude crisis. And on the planned protest, NLC, NAS, others insist government must address hunger and hardship. And I think most of our papers, Richard, I've just been seeing, trying to get the government view as well as NLC saying the government rather than stopping protesters from protesting. I think from yesterday we also saw when CNPP was talking about it, and then we're seeing the Labour joining to talk about it as well as NAS. And if the government is stopping people from protesting, I think we've said that a number of times, the fact that you need to address what is the root cause of the protest in the first place. People are hungry, and definitely they need their voice to be heard. And I recall you saying some few weeks ago the fact that you only need the strength to go out and protest. When you're hungry, there's no how you protest on an empty tummy. But we are seeing this thing happening not just in Nigeria. And I'm kind of a bit scared, Rachel, because I'm beginning to see most African countries seeing their citizens going on protest. Why? Because their government are not doing what they want. We have one in Kenya going on presently. As well, we're seeing that even in Uganda, the president is telling his citizens that they are playing with fire because they want to protest on anti-corruption. And the police over there is refusing to give them the permission to protest because, you know, you definitely need the permission of the police because they need to protect the citizen while protesting. And here we're seeing another protest again. And the reason why I said I'm scared is because I'm beginning to see leaders or leadership that is not going the way it should be. I'm seeing leaders that are refusing to own up to their responsibility and say, you know what, we are responsible for what is happening. Even if we are not responsible for the hardship, we met the hardship, we are trying something on our own to see how we can actually cushion the effect of all of this. So we're saying that some states are yet to get their palliative. And even if this palliative should get to the state, how many people will benefit from it? So I just hope, I'm just wishing, you know, they said if wishes were horses, will ride on it. I'm just wishing that the government will really look at this thing properly. What can we do? Because it's just next week, Thursday, 1st of August, when the protest is supposed to hold. And we're seeing a number of states are saying we will not be part of it. Abuja, please don't be part of it. You'll be saying, no, we are not part of it and all of these. Whether you come out to protest or not, people might not be in the street, but they're using their social media handles to express themselves in various ways. So I'm hoping that the government of the day, rather than shutting the mouths of Nigerians, address this issue once and for all so that we can have a peaceful country. You're afraid of coup, yet you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So who are we deceiving at the end of the day? I'm looking forward to, you know, that kind of, you know, body language coming from our leaders willing to address these issues that are happening presently.
So, to be honest, what worries the most is not even the threat coming from the government as regarding let people not go on strike or on a protest. The issue for me here is the fact that we have more division than unity. You see more people coming out and saying, don't be a part of it. We are taking our hands out. We don't understand the motive. All of this confusion and division is a concern. And we will never make headway if we don't unify as a country and say, look, the problem here is that we have a government that are not making policies that are pleasing. It has nothing to do with a tribe. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with a group of people. It has everything to do with Nigeria. Because a bag of rice is not different for a Christian or a Muslim in the market. A bag of rice is not different for a Yoruba or an Igbo man in the market. A bag of rice is not different for a child. Because I am 18 doesn't mean when I go to the market I'll get the bag of rice at 18,000 naira and a 50-year-old will get it at 80,000. It doesn't. The problem of the economy and the government doesn't choose tribe, religion, doesn't choose region, it doesn't choose all of these things. I think that as a country, until we get to that point, that it's humanity above all, that's patriotism, humanity of Nigerians, we would not make headway. And it still takes me back to the point where I keep saying our action doesn't look like we want change. Sele, to be honest, it doesn't matter about the keyboard warriors we have on social media. To me, it's beyond that. Is there an impact there? Absolutely, there is an impact. But our actions should speak louder than words. Because you know what? Even the federal government is on Twitter. Even the federal government is on Facebook. So everybody can type. Everybody can say what they want to. It's words. But what are the actions? What are our actions as Nigerians saying? It's saying we are divided. It's saying a lot of people are comfortable. And that is why you will begin to twist and manipulate the whole protesting and make it look like it's not one voice. It's hardship, it's bad governance, it's policies that the government are clearly seeing that is not working and they need to change it, but they are refusing to. is turning your eyes from the problem when you know there are certain flicks that I believe that the government knows that once we change this and this, certain things will become better. Everybody knows that fixing an economy doesn't happen overnight.
True.
It is not magic. It can't just happen one day. But what are the policies you are making now? What would it be the future for this country 10 years from now? These are the questions. And so far, so good. I don't see a policy that means well for Nigerians 10 years from now. It doesn't make sense. Okay, you are having a supplementary budget of 6.2 for once.
Trillion.
You understand, and you are banking on banks to be able to bring the revenue for this. Then what about the years ahead? Who would you keep going to? What are you doing about that? Is it about amending a finance act or giving an economy or putting in policies and strategies and structure that doesn't need these kinds of situation, a situation that might even end up being a problem at the end of the day? These are all the things that we're talking about. So more than the threat, the security agencies coming out and saying don't go, more than the threat from the government saying we shouldn't protest and all of that, what worries me truly, Sela, is our division as a country and whether truly we want to have one voice and grow, because we see countries that are having one voice making headways. But what about us? And we are the giants of Africa. We should be doing way better than we are doing. And we are seeing Dangote going to Angola for crude oil when our production is better than Angola. That's a slap on our face. These are all the things that worries me when it comes to everything that is happening in the country.
Honestly, because the body language, just like you said, it's the action, not just the words coming from every key player in this whole thing, because we've been seeing temporary solutions rather than solutions that will last a lifetime. So you giving a truck of rice, it's temporary.
It's very temporary.
So what are the permanent solutions?
Temporary.
Rachel,
Yes.
I mean, what are the permanent solutions you're providing? I think this is what Nigerians are really, really, after. Not, I mean, nobody is happy to leave his home and go to the street and protest and all of that. But let's just see what the government will do about that. And the last story on the paper I will be taking on the Guardian newspaper. GDP ranking, it's been 9 years of retrogression. OB laments. You can read that on page 4, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, security forces want sit-at-home promoters. Details can be found on page 29. APC calls for Obaseki's impeachment over Nigeria will burn comment. PDP accuses APC of misinterpretation. You can find details of his statement on page 28. NPA rakes in 541 billion naira revenue, remits 255 billion naira in first half of 2024. Reps wade into Dangote NMDPRA's field. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. Starting with electricity, why systems collapse won't end soon. This is an investigation. And let's go through the rider following that story that's saying 10 factors fueling Nigerians' frequent system collapse, frequency variation, lack of SCADA, others responsible. This is coming from a Power Up Nigeria. Hold TCN responsible for system collapse, coming from experts. Businesses pay for service they do not enjoy, coming from LCCI. No economy can make progress without stable power, coming from CPPE, and this is one of the key reasons why we have multinationals leaving, because the threat is very high, power is not stable, and we know it's very key as well for even small and medium enterprises. So the issue of power is really, really a serious concern to everybody. You can do well to read more detail of that on page 5. Resolving issue of Dangote refinery, we can see the key players there, Dangote, Kiari, and many others are trying to make headway on that. As well, we are seeing Dan Sohu takes over from Bello Kuku. You can read that in the paper. Security forces issue stand warning to sit-at-home promoters. You can read that on page 25. We have other picture stories, congratulations, and all of that on the front page of the paper, as well as a campaign down. So you can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Punch newspaper, the big story: fuel crisis. Marketers project 700 billion naira monthly subsidy. The writer says NNPC mom as dealers insist government still paying subsidy. Reps probe crude shortage. Dangote eyes foreign markets for refinery products. Federal government meet carry Dangote over dispute. Windfall tax. Federal government insists on sanctions for defaulting bank chiefs. Proposes 10% penalty on withheld levy. Organized private sector opposes fresh interest rate hike. Details can be found on page 23. Global banks to inject $7.5 billion into Nigeria power sector. Nigeria records $1 billion international transfer inflows in 3 months. Hunger protests. NLC warns against clampdown. Immigration officer 3 others arraigned for drug trafficking. Mastermind of Abuja General's mother nabbed in Kano. Details can be found on page 5. And in Edo, Igadalo's candidacy upheld. Shaibu fined 1 million naira. Details can be found on page 7. That's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Right before we continue with the paper review, we would love to take a break at this moment. Quite a lot for you to chew, and when we come back, we would love to see your own views concerning it. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just joining, the program is the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories where we're seeing that the National Assembly is trying to come in between the little misunderstanding between Dangote as well as the NNPC. We're hoping that whatever the issue is will be rectified, as well as we're seeing other states are complaining they are yet to get the trucks of grain that the federal government has promised. And then quite a number of other stories. NLC now talking about the protests. I mean, rather than the government trying to shut the mouths of Nigerians, why don't they go down and, have some dialogue with the, those who are planning the protests and see how we can have a headway rather than, causing all of this confusion that's happening. So all the stories are still on the paper. We would love you to drop your own views on it. I still have Rachel Tanzi with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take a look at the Voice of Liberty, the next paper we will be reviewing. Dangote refinery must not fail. Presidency finally breaks silence. NNPCL spent 7.3 billion naira on entertainment in 16 months. This is a report you can find in the paper. And then the new minimum wage, mass retrenchment looms as OPS rejects 70,000 naira. That's talking about the operational private sector. We will recall that they were on the fact that the minimum wage should be 62, but after it has been increased to 70, they're afraid that they have to lay off some people. So you can read more detail of that in the paper. North faces existential threat from poverty, insecurity, Uba Sani to the ACF. That's talking about the Arewa Consultative Forum says proposed national protests ill-time, counterproductive. Says proposed national protests ill-time, counterproductive. You can do it in more detail of what the governor of Kaduna State is saying to the Arewa Consultative Forum. Tinubu surrendered Nigerian sovereignty to IMF World Bank, coming from Huriwa. You have to read more detail of why they said that. And we're having pervasive corruption reaching all sector, but planned protests will cause anarchy, coming from Gumi. FBI charges top NNPC official over $2.1 million bribe to help Adax Petroleum escape the $2.4 billion liability to Nigeria. And coming from the Women Affairs Minister, National Assembly victimizing me over refusal to sign dubious $500 million loan. You have to read detail of that as well, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On Nigerian News Direct, no protest needed. We're tackling hardship economic downturn. Tinubu appealed. On food inflation, we share your pain, halved our salaries. This is a response from Rep Speaker. Dialogue with protester, avoid confrontation. NLC President urges federal government. Can Labour Students Union orders disown planned protest, back federal government? Details can be found on page 4. We will utilize 6.2 trillion naira extra budgetary proposal to boost infrastructure and assurance from the federal government. ASUP suspends strike as NBTE succumbs to demands. Bauchi records sharp drop in school attendance as free meal stops. After 13 years, Bielsa gets approval for national park. Dirty diesel allegation, federal government waits in to resolve tussle between Dangote and MDPRA. Still on the paper, Tier 1 bank ranking, Zenith Bank retains top spot for 15 consecutive years. Details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On Matrix newspaper, Nigerian crude oil price tops budget benchmark by $7.72 in the first quarter of 2024. And on transfer, Onana joins Aston Villa on £50 million deal. You can read that on page 16. Still on metrics, we have hashtag Embed Governance Protest, NLC Indume caution Tinubu. Invite leaders of planned protests, address citizens' grievances. NLC and Dume are the ones saying this. Bagudu budget minister urges Nigerians to make sacrifices for the country's growth. And here we have CPPE pleads with central bank to halt interest rate hike as the MPC meeting ends today. So we'll be able to know what is the new interest rate. So do well to read that on page 10. Monopoly substandard petroleum products claim. National Assembly talks tough with the rider here. Senate says saboteurs in petroleum industry matter of national security. Capable of crippling Nigerians' economy for generations to come. Reps launch probe, plays gag order on Dangote, MPDPRA and others. In reconciliation move, we have Lopuri meets Dangote and others. You can find that on page 2. Police nab Kuje prison escapee fingered in General Odukwere's mother. You can find that on page 13. Rivers crisis, another court gives Fubara go ahead to spend public fund. Obi calls for urgent action to prevent further economic collapse. That you can find on page 5. Tinubu government brought Dangote to tears. Very dark man is claiming that. You can read that on page 15. And we have the picture story showing us a peace and reconciliation move that was being made. And that's all on Metrics newspaper.
On New Telegraph newspaper, Nigeria's GDP likely to lose $122 billion in 1 year, coming from Obi, says leaders busy funding lifestyle amid poverty. Max Air loses 4 tires aboard takeoff. 119 passengers, 6 crew disembark with no injuries. We will deal with you like ghosts. Enugu security agencies warn stay-at-home promoters. More details can be found on page 2. Unplanned protests, eating from dustbins now luxury, address cries of Nigerians. NLC tells President Tinubu. You can find details on page 2, 4, and 29. Reps begin probe of adulterated fuel. And that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On Daily News Herb newspaper, Edu Guba Ohodalo floors Shaibu at appeal court, affirms by judge as the PDP candidate. The big story, federal government intervenes in Dangote MPPRA face-off, moves to resolve dispute as minister meets with Dangote federal government agency. More detail found in the paper. We can see the picture story during the reconciliation move. My friend who won against investing in Nigeria now taunting me. This is coming from Dangote. And Tinubu's minister, National Assembly victimizing me for refusing to sign dubious $500 million loan. This is coming from the Minister of Women Affairs, which we saw in one of the papers. Here we're having, I didn't lie about Tinubu's inaccessibility to lawmakers, Ndume insists. Obi lament Nigerians' economic decline, demands urgent action. And on the planned protests, Tinubu traditional religious leaders caution Nigerians. Tragedy, police sergeant shoot father to death in Borno. And we have death that identify as a retired ASP. This is a sad one. You can read detail in the paper. Abuja property again, court dismisses Abacha's family. 500 million naira sued against the federal government. Federal government snubbing our refinery to export crude oil to Indonesia. Dangote Group cries out. Hashtag end bad governance, how Tinubu can avert the nationwide protests. Hashtag end bad governance, how Tinubu can avert the nationwide protests, coming from the NLC president. People in NNPC don't want subsidy scam to end. This is coming from Emir Sanusi, detail found in the paper. And that's all on Daily News Herb newspaper.
On First News newspaper, Edu Guba appeal court upholds PDP primary, keeps Igadalu as candidate. You can't smack a child and ask them not to cry. NLC begs Tinubu to engage planned protest leaders. President talked to youth in Dume concourse. Still on the paper, Onanuga slammed anti-government protest claim Igbophobic, hateful, says Ohanize, as Utomi threatens 500 billion naira suit, demands proof. Protest will start at FCT. Sore replies CP's call on residents to shun planned demonstration. Minister hosts crucial meeting with Dangote, NMDPRA, NUPRC, NNPC leadership. On U.S. election, Charlie Boy vows to divorce wife of 47 years if Trump wins Harris. Reps launches probe into importation of substandard petroleum products. Army hands over Chibok girl, 330 others rescued from Boko Haram terrorists to Borno government. Appeal court upholds death sentence for Danish who murdered Nigerian wife. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
Well, Charlie Boy should be ready that Nigerians will keep their fingers crossed regarding that. Let's take a look at the next paper as well, which happens to be the Business Day newspaper. Let's see what's happening in the world of business. Biden's exit set example for Nigerian leaders. You can read what that entails, especially regarding our leaders that are of age. They should give over to people who have the mind and the strength to lead as well. Excuse me. Windfall tax, federal government mults jail term for defaulting banks officers. You can read that on page 6 as well. What to expect from economy in the next 6 months. You have to find out that on page 30. Nigerians' debt burden set off reform alarm. And downside, we have Nigerians' long battle against inflation continues as the MPC decide the new interest rate. You can read that on the front page and continue on page 30. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, Benzema picked Vinicius Jr. to win Ballon d'Or award. Details can be found on the back page. De Bruyne's Al Ittihad deal off. Man United inserts buyback clause in Greenwood Marcel deal. More details can be found on page 2. The big story on the paper, new twist in Osimhen PSG deal. Napoli offers striker French side for 90 million plus league can in Nigeria opens to staying at Napoli. More details can be found on page 6. Sancho close to agreeing transfer away to PSG. Mbappe futures as Real Madrid releases bold new away kit. LeBron James team USA male flag bearer at Paris Olympics. Transport Southampton agrees €7 million deal for Nacho. Details can be found on page 6. Etebo resurrects, joins Turkish club. More details can be found inside the paper. NPFL secures mega deal with UK TV production. And WTA ranking, we have Swatek remains number 1. Muchova returns to top 30. More details can be found at the back page. And we have Fenerbahce to face Lille if you can find details on page 3. And we have Pep rejects Donnarumma swap deal. And we have Garnacho denies snubbing Messi. Details can be found at the back page. And that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you to all our followers. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to the crew and every other person that made this program a success. Thank you, Richard, as well for
You're
all
welcome,
this.
It's always a pleasure.
All right, before you we'll go again, just to let you know that you should take care of yourself, stay out of trouble, and make sure you be your brother's keeper. Have a blessed day ahead.